Hey y'all, my name's Priscilla and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing a recommendation video for the Latinx-A-THON. So I'm going to try and organize this by the prompts, and for each of the prompts I'm going to give at least 2 recommendations. While I'd love to say that I've read all these, I really wanted to include a variety of books in both genre and for each of the prompts. So for the books that I haven't read, I did do extensive research and I read a lot of Own Voices reviews, so that way I felt comfortable recommending them to you. And I will mention those when I speak about those books. Hey y'all, this is Priscilla in editing. It bothered me to no end that my hair covered up my shirt throughout the entire video, so I'm including this thumbnail shot so you can read the entire shirt. And I will also be linking the shop where I bought the shirt down below. It is Afro-Latinx owned. So that's cool. This isn't sponsored. I just like the shirt. All right, back to the video. So let's just go ahead and start jumping into these books. So for the first recommendation for the Voices prompt, I'm going to be recommending books that are written by Afro-Latinx or Indigenous authors, or that feature main characters that identify as Afro-Latinx or Indigenous. The first recommendation I have for you is a book called Bird of Paradise: How I Became a Latina by Raquel Cepeda. And this is a nonfiction memoir that chronicles Raquel Cepeda's life and her discovery of her identity as a biracial person. It starts off with her father, her estranged father, who suffers a near-death experience. I believe he has like a heart attack or some sort of health-related risk, and she goes down this path of discovery to find out about his side of the family that she would have otherwise lost all history and knowledge of. And her history, she spends summers in the Dominican Republic, and she comes back home to New York City. She's based in New York City, and she falls in love with 80s hip-hop. And it's really a discovery of herself and acceptance of herself. Her father also wanted her to hide her entire Dominican ancestry because it was just easier. So this book is very honest, it's very raw. She uses a very unique prose to tell her own story, and she uses her own Dominican and Afro-Latinx identity as a sort of foundation and understanding for other Latinx folks that probably have many similar experiences to her own. So I'm kind of biased because I tend to like memoirs, and I especially like generational memoirs. So if that's your sort of thing, and if you want a nonfiction read, I do recommend this. And the next Afro-Latinx recommendation I have for you is a book called The Infamous Miss Rodriguez, and it is by Lydia San Andres. And this is a historical romance that takes place on a small Caribbean island with a Afro-Latinx heroine main character in the early 1900s. And this is a novella. It's very short, and it's in a universe of grander other novels by the same author. So if you're interested in a romance sort of series, I would recommend this to you. And from what I can gather from Own Voices reviews, this is about Miss Rodriguez, who is engaged to marry another rich, prominent man from another family who doesn't want to be married. So she sort of wants to sabotage this marriage. And in order to protect the family name and reputation, her aunt hires Vicente to sort of keep an eye out for her and make sure that she doesn't do anything too scandalous. And we all know where that's gonna go. So I've been really into romance lately, and especially historical romance that features women of color in main character roles. So this sounds really like a simple but fun and delightful read that you could add to your TBR. So the next batch of recommendations I have for you are for the Pride prompt. And the Pride prompt is to read a book that features a queer Latinx main character, or that is written by a queer Latinx author. But before I start getting into those recommendations, I also wanted to say something that I failed to mention in my announcement video, which is our group book, Itza, if you choose to pick it up, would count for the Pride prompt as well, because the author identifies as a queer Chicana author. So that totally counts if you choose to pick this one up. And we know that Itza may not be as accessible as we'd hope because it is an indie small publisher book, so it is a total optional prompt for you to intake if you want to participate in the Latinx-A-thon. Okay, so on to my recommendations. So the first book that I want to recommend is called The Gods Athango by Carolina de Robertis. And I read this book recently and absolutely loved it. I cannot recommend it enough. It is a gem of a novel. It's so beautiful, but let me just tell you what it's about. So this is a historical fiction novel that takes place in the early 1900s in Buenos Aires, Argentina. And it is written by an author from Uruguay. In the beginning of the book, we are introduced to Lida, who is a young Italian that has recently moved to Buenos Aires to be married. However, to be independent, Lida now presents as male, as Dante, and he decides to join a tango band to play the violin, which is something that only men could do at the time. However, as the story progresses, as we view Dante's life from being a young person in Buenos Aires to an old man, we realize, and he realizes, that he is actually a trans man, and this is not just a front, this is not just something that he's doing for his career. So in this, Robertis crafts such a beautiful novel with such lush and dense writing that you feel so connected to. The writing itself is very sensual, and she describes music in such a beautiful way because Dante loves the violin so much and the tango so much that you really feel connected. And what I read from Own Voices reviews in terms of the trans representation, what is so beautiful about this book as well is the sort of gradients of non-binariness that Dante goes throughout his life as he is discovering himself. And that was just really beautiful to read, so highly recommend that book. My next recommendation for the Pride prompt is Desert Blood, The Juarez Murders by Alicia Gaspar de Alba. And this is a book that I read last year and really loved as well. It's a mystery that fictionalizes true events that have happened and I think are still happening and are still unsolved at the US-Mexican border. And there's this femicide that is happening where young brown girls are being killed, murdered, raped, and brutalized on both sides of the border. And there's this huge conspiracy with the Border Patrol and with cops and with both cities, Juarez and El Paso, in covering up these murders. This book would also count for the Roops prompt because the author is bilingual and she speaks a lot of Spanish in the text as well, and its Own Voices for queer representation as well. So in this, we are introduced to Yvonne, who is a queer Latinx woman who is going back home to El Paso to adopt a young baby from a woman named Cecilia, who is a worker in Juarez and who unfortunately can't care for her child. So things take a drastic turn in this book when Cecilia actually is found disemboweled and murdered. And things get even closer to home, to Yvonne's home, when her younger sister is kidnapped. And so Yvonne takes it upon herself to find out what is happening with these murders that are happening, and an entire mystery unfolds upon itself. From that premise, obviously there are content warnings for lots of things. There's lots of rape, there's lots of murder, there's lots of graphic violence, so be warned for that. This book hit me like a Mack truck. It was such a brutal, hard read, and it made me angry because these things are still happening. I highly recommend this if that's something that you'd like to read about, because it's definitely a prevalent issue still to this day. So now moving on to our prompt for Roots, I'm going to be recommending books that feature more than one language or that are translated. And the first book that I have to recommend is The Diary of Frida Kahlo. And this is a book that I might be stretching for this prompt, but I'm going to include it because while all of her journal entries and illustrations are in Spanish, there are in the very back translations to all of the text in Spanish. So I don't think that this is best for people that don't have at least some sort of basic understanding of Spanish, because I feel like it would be kind of frustrating to flip back and forth to the back. But I think this would totally count for this prompt. And this is a diary, a graphic diary with many illustrations about Frida's dreams and her tumultuous relationship with her husband, Diego Rivera. So yeah, this is a recommendation that I think would be available at your library as well, because I know it's available at mine. So the next book that I recommend is a translated work from Spanish to English, and it is Things We Lost in the Fire by Mariana Enriquez, and it is translated by Megan McDowell. So this is a book that I haven't read, but from Own Voices reviews, I can gather that it is mostly positive and people liking it, and the translation is actually pretty good. So this is a collection of short stories, and it's kind of hard to pinpoint exactly what the general themes of all these stories are, because with a collection like this, some of them are similar, but some of them are very different. But from what I can gather, there's a overall tone of creepy horror-esque themes. Is murder, there's torture, there's ghostly haunts, there's urban legends, there's heartbreak, and they all take place in unnamed cities in Argentina. So this is being described as for fans of Shirley Jackson, so if you want to get in the fall horror vibes, I recommend this. Alright, moving on to the next prompt, heritage. I'm going to be recommending books from authors from a non-Spanish speaking Latin American country or heritage. And my first recommendation is a graphic novel called Day Tripper by Fabian Moon and Gabriel Ba. And this is a graphic novel from Brazilian brothers that takes place mostly in Brazil and a little bit in El Salvador. This is a book that follows a main character who is a writer of obituaries, but who really wants to be a famous novelist like his father. And it's a really poignant and haunting look at life. The question that constantly is being asked is, when do you really start to live your life? And what is the meaning of your life? The story is told in a series of vignettes of periods of this man's life. His first love, his first baby, his marriage, and in each vignette, each chapter kind of has this overall theme of, I don't know what my life means, what is giving my life meaning, and what is the purpose of my life. There is also a bit of a magical element to the story, and I just really like the brothers' artwork, so if you're looking for that sort of illustrated read, I recommend this. My last recommendation is another book from Brazil, and the book is called The War of the Saints by Jorge Amado, and it is translated by Gregory Rabassa. Now this is a book that sounds really amazing from the premise, but I am most hesitant to recommend because it was really hard for me to find Own Voices reviews for this. I did find some, but not very many. But I thought that I still really want to read this, so why not mention it here. So this is a captivating tale that surrounds the Carnival celebration in Brazil. And in this, there is a goddess by the name of Yansan, also known as the Saint Barbara of Thunder, who is a Afro-Brazilian goddess. She arrives to Bahia, the city in Brazil, as a statue to be on display at this art exhibit. But upon arrival, she actually comes to life and begins to celebrate amongst the people in the city. And everywhere that she goes, she has an influence and effect on the people around her. So we see many perspectives from all the people that encounter her. So she liberates this woman from very rigid patriarchal family relationships that she has, and she saves a priest from assassination somehow, and she makes a fool of the local police, and just thoroughly enjoys the celebrations. There's lots of dancing, there's lots of fun times in this book. And if you decide to pick this up, it can check off many of the other prompts as well. It is translated from Portuguese to English, so it would be checking off the voices prompt. And it also features a Afro-Latinx goddess as the main character, so it would also check off the voices prompt, which is a good thing because it is one of the lengthier books that I'm recommending today. And if you're going to pick it up, you might as well get as many prompts covered as possible. So that is my last recommendation for today. I really wanted to make sure to get as many different books in here as possible, so hopefully there is something in here for everyone. Also, there are a number of heavy hitter, what I think of like heavy hitter books that I didn't mention in this that I could have, but really wanted to create a recommendation video that included different books that you probably hadn't heard of before or as often as others. Kind of running down a list of other books that could easily fit for this readathon. There's The Poet X, there's The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, there's anything by Adam Silvera. They both died at the end, made me shed a tear or two, so that's another big one. Many books that I feel like you've heard over and over again but would totally work as well. And my co-hosts will also be putting up their recommendation videos, so make sure to check all of those out to get all your Latinx recommendations in before the readathon. Well, that's all that I have for this recommendation video today. Leave a comment below if any of these books intrigue you or sound interesting to you. I know that for a fact I could use myself recommendations for the Indigenous main character or Indigenous author prompt that I had trouble finding, so if you have any recommendations for that, I would love to hear them. But that's all I have for today, so thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video. Bye!